Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Next Perfect Step. I'm your co host, Laurie Mullen.
I'm your co-host, Kim McStay, and this podcast is set up so that people can come. It's kind of a community-based platform, and people can come and learn and share their thoughts in a safe environment.
Right, good. I am your co-host, Laurie Tremblay, and we're so happy to have you with us listening today. And we have a wonderful guest, Juliana Sloan from Santa Fe, New Mexico. And she's going to tell us about her career as a shamanic healer, a hypnotherapist, Buddhist teacher, and other things that involved in. So we're excited to learn more about you, Juliana. Welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. It's wonderful to be here. I already feel like hanging out, having coffee with a group of friends. So it's really lovely to spend this morning with you.
Great. So what kind of brought you to these modalities? They're so deep, right? And diverse.
It's a great question. And, honestly, it's a kind of a lifelong winding path. I was always as long as I can remember, very spiritually curious. I was a very sensitive, very imaginative, very creative kid, and had some very deep meditative experiences even as a young child that I didn't have the language for yet. I didn't have the words to exactly say what I was experiencing until many years later when I began going on silent meditation retreats. And all of a sudden, some of the deep states of concentration that we were fostering in meditation, I was having these vivid memories of like, oh, that's what was happening when I was a little kid. And I was noticing the thoughts and I was seeing the insubstantial nature of what was arising and passing in my experience. And so some of it really is this sort of baked in. I do feel like there is a level of just this is who I have always been, and it's been a process of deepening into that. And then, of course, like most people who end up dedicating their life to Buddhist practice, to healing arts, you usually don't get there if everything in your life is going absolutely perfectly. I had a number of experiences of trauma as a younger person and really came back. I experienced and explored meditation and chanting and all different modalities when I was a teenager. And I circled back around it a little bit later in my 20s after a significant trauma. And the sense really was there has to be something more, something deeper, a better way to be living my life than clocking in at a meaningful but stressful job that I was in the throes of burnout with. And over years, it really did feel like one door after another opened. I began with Buddhist meditation. I've been a Buddhist meditation teacher for 10 years. I stumbled into shamanic journey work and hypnosis. A friend invited me to a workshop and I was hooked. It did such wonders for my own life, particularly around healing attachment wounding. I was completely amazed that it changed my relationships and made it possible for me to be with myself and with others in a much more free, much more secure, much more grounded way. And over time, after really exploring all of these modalities deeply for myself and my own healing, it became really clear that this was something that I wanted to be able to offer to others.
Could you explain the attachment wounds a little bit more for our audience?
Absolutely. For folks who aren't familiar with attachment styles, there are a number of different attachment styles. There's secure attachment, which means it's possible to have a very comfortable, securely connected relationship where there can be rupture and repair, and it doesn't feel particularly threatening. This is one subset of the population, but not surprisingly, most of us, many of us, may not have gotten the exact attunement that we needed when we were young. So that sense of an easy, trusting bond is maybe a little bit less available. I myself identified with anxious attachment, and I can track a lot of that back. I was born almost 12 weeks premature. So I spent 3 months of my very first days of life in the NICU in an incubator. This was the early 80s. So honestly, it's miraculous that I'm here. This sort of stuff happens now and it's not a huge deal, but back then it was something. It really was something. And because of that, and because of a number of other early experiences, I had a lot of anxiety. I had a lot of fear of abandonment. And with that, often we repeat the same patterns that we choose. I found myself, like many of my clients do, then selecting relationships that mimicked that early feeling of scarcity or abandonment or unavailability. And so for myself, I found myself repeating that cycle over and over and over. And I had done therapy. I had done so much inner work. I understood it intellectually to a T. I could talk about it. I could feel it, but I couldn't change the pattern. And that's really where the shamanic healing work and the hypnosis came in. And I was amazed at what an impact that made. And, I say that now as somebody who has very happily been with my partner for 7 years. And, I get to spend every day with my best friend. It's night and day different from the choices that I was making earlier in life. And I really do owe it to these healing modalities.
That's interesting. I like what you said about, going deep and it intellectually what's going on, but you can't really identify how to fix it.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
I too did some shamanic journey, and I think that was one of the most powerful things I've done, because I remember the journeys, I remember the lessons, I remember the medicine that came through those journeys, and I just think it's an amazing process. I haven't personally experienced hypnosis, but I would certainly be open to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's part of, I would say, the majority of my clients, they come to me because they say, I get it intellectually. I've done a lot of work around it already, and I know that there's something deeper. And as you know, the shamanic work can really bring us deeper. The way that I practice as a shamanic counselor and practitioner is not that I am offering healings or performing healings on someone. I'm teaching them to journey and to become their own healer. This is another layer of, how do we place as much agency as possible into the hands of the people that we're working with. And, the forms of hypnosis that I use, honestly, there's a couple modalities I choose from. One actually incorporates shamanic healing. That one is called depth hypnosis. It is a modality that was created in the 90s by Dr. Isa Gucciardi, and it brings in shamanic healing, hypnosis, Buddhist wisdom, transpersonal psychology, and it actually really helps people use those tools, but in a very contained, very supportive way. So if you're somebody who maybe is interested in having a shamanic experience but also feels intimidated by it, it's a way to really get in there and begin working with guidance in a way that feels a little more accessible. I feel like in some ways it's a, secret backdoor into helping people discover shamanic work without having to, be wearing the mantle of like, oh, this is, capital S shamanic work, and that has some meaning or connotation to them that might just feel a little intimidating or a little, out of the norm for them. The other types of hypnosis I use are more integrative, really based on neuroplasticity, on habit change, on actually using metaphor and symbol and archetype and story to rewire the brain. And it's amazing to see the change. I was working with somebody last night who she's a longtime client, and I just adore her. And she just happened to come in with, and I work with everybody virtually, so I work with people worldwide. She's many hundreds of miles away from me. She came in over Zoom, and she had just thrown her back out. And we worked with the hypnosis modalities to bring enough relaxation and support into the body that all those nerve endings and all those muscles that were freaking out and saying something is absolutely wrong got to soften and loosen and become more flexible enough so that she was like, okay, I'm going to be able to go take a bath. I'm going to get into bed. I'm going to be able to rest well. All of a sudden, the body's contraction in response to pain was able to loosen. So there's so many different ways of working with this. Obviously, I am excited about it and really enjoy it. So you can probably tell there's some enthusiasm there.
Well, there should be. That sounds wonderful and so needed. And in hypnosis, does she get the opportunity to see where, like, what caused that pain and how would you work through that?
Absolutely. It depends on the person and the situation. So there are people that I work with, I actually work with a lot of people with chronic illness, chronic pain, a lot of ways that the body is also suffering and, not feeling at its best. And there are some people that, we're working simultaneously with the symptoms of their Lyme disease or their long COVID. And we're also working with the relational patterns that it brings up, the grief, the fear of being a burden, the isolation, whatever that is, because, we see over and over that when there is illness in the body and there's something that's really deeply impacting our life, that's not just a physical issue, that's an emotional and spiritual issue. And so it can be tackled from many different angles. And there are many different angles that can bring a sense of relief, a sense of more personal power, a sense of hope. And then sometimes, like the person last night, she pulled a muscle playing tennis. It wasn't, some deep thing that happened in childhood. It was just happened to be that we already had scheduled a call, and she was in so much pain that it wasn't possible to go in a different direction because the thing that was prominent was the pain. And the beautiful thing is that, they have found this for things like IBS. They've found for chronic pain that part of what's happening is that the nerves, the nervous system are, overreacting to the stimulus of the pain. And so one of the great things that we can do with hypnosis is help that calm down and help the nervous system realize that while it felt like an emergency, it's actually manageable and it's something that we can work with.
Yeah, that's awesome. A big believer that pain and discomfort and stuff is, we're not just our physical bodies, we're all three. It's physical, mental, spiritual. But then there are times when we just pull a muscle. Like it's just as natural as that too. And we have to keep that in mind too. Sometimes when we just pull a muscle, it is just a pulled muscle. I think that because we know that, sometimes we dive too deep into every little thing, right? And sometimes it just is what it is. So I think that was really important to say.
Exactly. So sometimes we need to do deep metaphysical work. Sometimes we might need antibiotics. Sometimes we need both.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about the Buddhist path.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, it's funny where to begin. It's something that I've been in connection with since I was a teenager, but did not in the, pre Google being quite the thriving powerhouse that it is. We didn't have meditation apps. There weren't, calm didn't exist. 10% happier would have sounded far out in the 90s. I began attempting to learn to meditate when I was very young. And as a young person, my only experience of meditation, aside from these early experiences that I'd sort of forgotten, was this idea that you're supposed to sit quietly. And that's supposed to somehow make you feel better. And I don't know about you, but if you just sit quietly and you have no training, the likelihood that you're going to just see the roller coaster of your mind and all the stuff churning, it's really highly likely. At that time, I had no idea that, this was about seeing and witnessing my thoughts, but not clinging to them. And so every time I tried to sit in meditation, it was a profoundly challenging experience. And so, I set some of the practice down. I studied religion. I was deeply, deeply moved at 18 when I first read the Buddhist precepts, which were around, these are vows that we take to not cause harm. So to not kill, to speak truthfully, but with respect and kindness, to not cause harm with our sexuality, things like this. That, the first time I encountered this sort of thinking and the idea that the way that we behave in our life, it impacts other people, but it also impacts our ability to sit and be comfortable with who we are. It was really a groundbreaking thing for me. Most of the people in my life, there was a lot of alcohol in my family of origin. There was a lot of mismanaged emotion. There was a lot of times where I could see, oh wow, if other people were following these sort of guidelines, we'd be living in a really different world. So there was a kernel there that was sort of a little seed set in motion, set into the ground. But it wasn't until a little bit later that I dove deeply back into practice, going to meditation groups regularly, sitting silent retreats. Eventually, I became the manager of a meditation center for a number of years, and I really fell in love with the practice. And, both on a pragmatic level, being on retreat, being in silence, allowing myself space to really feel, really be present, really show up for myself was absolutely powerfully transformative. But also some of the Buddhist tenets and philosophies became such a guiding light for me. One of the understandings that's a formative teaching of Buddhism is this idea of the Four Noble Truths. And the first noble truth is the fact that there is stress and suffering and difficulty, that it's part of being human. That's not actually like wrong. That we are going to encounter struggles. We're going to have ruptures in our relationships, or we're going to have bad days, or we might experience illness or an accident or a loss, and that's normal. And of course, the truths go on to say that the suffering happens, but that the greatest aspect of our suffering isn't, the job loss or the illness or the break in a relationship. It's actually how we react. The fact that we will grip so tightly to the way that we think things should be and want things to be. You know, the phrase, the rope burns of clinging, like you're holding onto this rope and it's being pulled from your hands. That the tighter we hold on, and the more we try to force our very constricted agenda on what's actually unfolding in reality, that we tend to suffer. You know, and of course, the Four Noble Truths offer hope. They say there's a way out of this. You don't have to suffer like this. And here's a path forward. And part of what I really loved about that is it's not just go meditate. It's a whole life path that includes meditation, but it also includes community and how we earn our living and how we treat ourselves and how we, understand and react to the world. So there really are so many entry points there. It's something that it felt natural and it felt logical. And there was, almost no way to not move in that direction and keep on going deeper and eventually be in the teaching seat, because it just, there was something so profound and so real about it that, yeah, of course this makes sense. It made sense.
So when you talked about it's the way we react, I really think that that's so important to bring to people's attention, is that, we are going to experience all of these things, loss, pain, suffering, but the reaction and the ability to grow into a place where your reaction is for your benefit, I think is so important. I mean, I've been through quite a bit of trauma myself, and for me, it's a silver lining to everything that I am now and what I've discovered about myself and about, life in general. So I love that you brought that up and that you made that connection. That was really, really nice to hear for our listeners to hear too.
Yeah, it's so easy to kind of crystallize around the suffering. It really is. And that, I think, in so many ways is our task in whatever healing modalities that we engage in, to find a way to soften, find a way to let go a little bit, There's this quote from Pema Chodron, who's a Buddhist teacher. Pain is not a punishment. Pleasure is not a reward. And I carry that with me because it goes against so much that we're taught in our culture. That if you're feeling good and maybe you've got some money and you're popular or whatever it is, you got the car or the relationship or the fancy job, that somehow you're good. Somehow you're being rewarded. And I think these days we know that a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is the systems that we live under that make that easier for some people over others. And part of our task really is to keep on coming into that realization that, if something bad happens, it's not because we're wrong.
Yeah, that reminded me, I heard a quote the other day, amazingly enough, from Jim Carrey, but he said that, I wish everybody in the world got everything they ever dreamed of to know it means absolutely nothing.
Oh, I love
and that has stayed with me for a while since I've heard it. Like,
he's secretly a deep guy.
Right? It's crazy, actually. But yeah, that really stuck with me.
Yeah.
Juliana, would you be comfortable in just, helping us to go into a brief meditation? So can walk us through and our listeners through a simple meditation that they can do to relax, or
yeah, sure. We can just do a little
put you on the spot.
Yeah,
no, that's fine. We can do a little gentle grounding practice.
Great.
Just for a few minutes, and with the caveat that if you're in the car and you're listening to this, please don't Close your eyes and relax. You should really pay attention to traffic. Um, so just letting your eyes close. And I'm deciding how we're going to mix this up. We might bring a little bit of a hypnotic vibe into it too. Yeah, so just letting yourself sit here and placing your palms on your lap with your palms facing the ceiling. And beginning by just feeling the chair or the couch or the bed, wherever you find yourself listening, feeling that support under your body. And just beginning by turning your attention to the palm of your right hand. And imagining that you could just rest your whole mind, all your attention, all your awareness right there in the palm of your right hand. As if you could let your mind just take a rest there in the palm of that hand. And then sliding that attention, that mind up into the inside of the right elbow, that soft, kind of cradling space, letting the mind rest in the inside of that right elbow. And then moving that mind to rest right on top of the right shoulder, as if it could just comfortably lean or rest or perch right there on that right shoulder, just resting the mind, resting the attention. And then sliding it over to the left shoulder, and maybe you notice that resting the mind on that left shoulder feels a little different. Maybe it feels the same. And then letting it slide down into the inside of that left elbow. Cradling the mind, the awareness, the attention there in that left inner elbow. And bringing it into the palm of that left hand, resting. And then over into the palm of that right hand. Right inner elbow. Right shoulder. Left shoulder. down to that left elbow. Resting in the palm of that left hand. And one more time to the palm of the right hand. Right inner elbow. Right shoulder. Left shoulder. Left inner elbow. Left palm of the hand. And then just expanding outward to feel your whole body resting here, breathing. And noticing if you can find or sense some place in the body right now that feels relatively comfortable or good or at ease. And it could be the soles of your feet, or the tingling of energy in your hands. Maybe it's the belly relaxed, or just the flow of your breath. Just letting yourself land on some place in your embodied experience that feels pretty good or pretty easy. And just for now, letting yourself really take that feeling of comfort or groundedness or ease in the body in. Almost like you could allow it to get a little bigger or more expansive and just suffuse the whole body. It might feel very gentle, or it might feel more pronounced. There's no wrong way. Just resting in what's good here, right now. And then when you're ready, you can just stretch a little bit and come back into the room. And so that's one short practice that, especially if there's we find ourselves in a little bit of a train of thought or a loop and we can't quite get out of feeling a little stuck, just to reset and disrupt that train that we've been riding on.
Thank you so much for that. I feel wonderful. My hands were tingling.
I know I was
Yeah.
feeling a lot too. I love the whole,
Circle.
this whole spiral approach to it. That was
Yeah,
really-
and that's a little mini hypnotic induction right there. And part of the reason that I love pairing hypnosis and meditation actually is that some of these tools of dropping into deeper trance-like states, they're so conducive to meditation, especially for people who are like, I can't meditate, my mind is so busy. If we help ourselves along a little bit, we can drop in so much deeper, but we just need to have the right tools.
Well, those were wonderful tools. I think everyone, ourselves included, but all of our listeners can definitely use that. And it's something easy to remember and easy to do. And just, I felt really deeply relaxed, and I needed that today.
And I
we
love
could
how
all
you-
use it.
I loved how you put the mind, resting, because it is hard for people to disassociate from all the chaos and commotion. And that's just a nice way of saying it's okay for this mind to be there and thinking, but let's just let it rest. I loved that.
Yeah.
That was just really beautiful.
I'm so glad that that was supportive. I mean, this really is that place where, our mind, it responds to metaphor and imagery in such a powerful way that, we could tell ourselves, oh, just relax. Over and over and over and over. For those of us who've been very sensitive for our whole life, we've probably been told, oh, just relax. But when we actually give the mind something to do and give it a metaphor that it can actually utilize in service of that relaxation, even if it is just like, taking the mind and resting it there. Or, what if it was that red hot burning in your headache? What if it turned to something that was blue and cool and a little more spacious? And there's something that happens here, as simple as it sounds, but 95% of what's going on for us is unconscious. There's only about 5% of our thought, behavior, action, activity that's at the conscious level. And that unconscious speaks in metaphor and image and story. And so there's something there that we can really partner with that 95% that's unconscious to rewrite the patterns and rewrite the stories.
That's really interesting. And I think I agree with that, because I've heard that it's the tip of the iceberg, is most of it's underwater. But I think you're right about story is something that we really powerfully can relate to. And ancient cultures, indigenous cultures, all use story, right, for teaching their families and their tribes. So
Exactly.
thank you for bringing that up. Laurie, did you have anything that resonated with you?
Well, it was just deeply relaxing, and I loved every minute of it. So thank you.
Oh, I'm so
I
glad.
just wonder how people could work with you further, what you offer and where they could reach you.
Absolutely. I do deep one-on-one work with people who are looking to change patterns, make a shift in their life in some way. A lot of opportunity there to do really powerful work together, as well as, I do shorter term work too with people who are looking for a very specific habit change. I work with a lot of people navigating things like phobias, anxiety around different things, wanting to, simple stuff like exercise more, eat healthier. So, I do both. Very deep ongoing work as well as that shorter targeted work. And if people are interested in working with me, you can go to my website. It's julianasloan.com. And there's a button to schedule a free consultation. That's just a 30-minute call where we can get to know each other. Folks can see if it feels like a good fit. They can ask any questions that they have, get a better sense of, okay, like, yeah, does this feel like a good fit? Can we make some changes together? And so that's one great option. I also teach meditation a lot online. I must admit, I'm loving the Zoom era where I can teach in Arizona one day and in California the next. Actually, tomorrow I'm teaching in Arizona and California on the same day. So there's also a link on my website that's just says meditation. And so there's usually a calendar of different events if people just want to come and meditate together as well. So there's a couple different entry points to be able to connect.
Yes, and so needed. I highly recommend. I mean, after that little meditation, I feel so much better. So I can't imagine what a whole meditation would be like. I think it would just be wonderful. Well, I want to really thank you for being on our show today and sharing with our viewers the many ways that they can work with you and the great work that you're doing. I mean, number one, just everybody needs a reset on our nervous system. So, I mean, that was just wonderful. So I want to thank you very much. Laurie or Kim, did you have any last words?
No, just great appreciation for you being on the show today. It was very inspiring.
I feel the same way. Thank you for gracing our day and our life.
Oh, thank you so much. This was such a treat to start. I mean, it's morning for me still. You're about in your afternoon now, but it was such a treat to be able to have this be the first thing of my day. So really, thank you so much for having me. This was a joy.
If you've liked this episode as much as we have, please like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, how is your intuition leading you to the next perfect step?